So Leafs ex-head coach Mike Babcock, he's been under quite the microscope over the past couple of days here. Even more so now after all the hatred came out that people just wanted him fired. I think that was just pure hatred in the first place. But now you start to see some of the underlying things, such as this Mitch Marner list, where you're supposed to go out there and name, the hardest working players on the team. A list that I think this is where things get hairy, because a lot of people say, oh, it was bullying, or all is this, or all is that. You shouldn't have done this, you shouldn't have done that. But I think you have to look at it, from this perspective. Do I have a problem with the list personally? I mean, not exactly. No, I think the list was a way to motivate Marner, but here's where the list becomes a problem. It was a list. He made the list to say, look, Marner, I want you to be a harder worker. I hope that's the way he wanted it to be taken. Like, he wanted it to be taken as, Marner, I want you to be a harder worker. It wasn't like he had malicious intent to go out there. He didn't want to put Marner down. He wanted to use that as motivation for Marner. But the problem becomes when you go and show that list to the rest of the team. You show that list to the rest of the team, and all of a sudden you're going out there and you're trying to draw lines. Essentially, you're saying, here's Marner's list. He thinks you're not the hardest worker. He thinks you suck at working hard. He thinks you're lazy as hell. You're the worst players on this team, and Mitch Marner's the reason. He's going out there and pointing it out and saying, like, that's drawing lines. That's causing problems, and that's a problem. That is a big problem right there, in my opinion. That part of it is. But I think the Babcock issue here we're having is, he's one of those guys that, I guess he doesn't think through what he was going to say. He doesn't play devil's advocate enough, is the way I like to think of it. He doesn't think of, well, if I say this and do that, what are the repercussions of which ways can it be taken? A lot of people these days, they'll go out and say something. They mean one thing, but it'll be taken another way. And Babcock's a perfect example of this. He went out there, he did this with the intention. And, personally for me, if you go out there and you try to point out that I'm not the hardest working player on the team, or I'm, struggling in this area, everybody else is working harder than me, and I'm going to take that as motivation. I'm going to take that as motivation, say, I want to be the hardest working player on this team. I want to be the best player on this team. But at the same time, there's people that take that as, being put down. And then there's the case of, like I said, with the Mitch Marner thing, where you take it to the public, and you got to consider, we don't live in the same world we lived in even 10 years ago. Thanks to social media, everything's, so much put under a microscope. You can't say the same things you used to be able to say without, there being some sort of repercussion or some other way of looking at it. And that's what you have to do with it here. You have to look at it and say, well, Marner, he could take it this way. The guy's 19. He's a 19-year-old kid. The guy, think of where you was at 19. And then imagine yourself getting put on a professional hockey team with a bunch of grown-ass men, and tell me what you would think having to make a list like this, trying to just go out there and call out every player on your team. Like, that is clearly not a good look there. And, there's sayings he's went around and done other things at the same time, but other forms of motivation to quote-unquote motivate players. I do say that, though. Like, you can go out there and try to make Babcock sound like the worst person in the world all you want. At the end of the day, this guy was the coach of your team, and there was no point in his tenure can you go out there and honestly say he wanted to see this team fail. And if he wanted to see the team fail, he'd go out there and try to put his players down. He'd try to make his players feel bad. He'd try to make them play bad. I don't think that was his intention. But I don't think he looked through what he was saying. I don't think he thought through what he was saying. You can go look back and say, oh, maybe I should have done this different. Maybe I should have done that different. I can't prove it. I wouldn't know. But it was one of those guys. It almost felt like he needed somebody to go and, sit him down and say, like, you got to think about, what you're saying here or saying there. Like, I think you got the greatest intentions in the world, but you're saying, it's not coming out the way you want it to come out at the end of the day.